All right, so I'm Lisa Whalen. I'm the mayor, and I'm calling the City Council meeting to order, and this is the Minnetrista City Council meeting for March 23rd. It was suggested that we do a sound check prior to each meeting, so what I'll do is I'll use our roll call to ensure everyone present can hear and also be heard. So when I call your name, please respond with, yes, I'm here. That'll give us a few extra words to make sure we can all hear each other. So I'll start out with Pam Mortensen.
Yes, I'm here.
Mike Molitor.
Yes, I'm here.
John Chumperland.
Yes, I'm here.
Shannon Bruce.
Yes, I'm here.
The city engineer, Allison Fauski.
Yes, I'm here.
Our city clerk, Chris Lindquist.
Yes, I'm here.
Public Works Superintendent, Gary Peters.
Yes, I'm here.
City Administrator, Mike Baroni.
Yes, I'm here.
Finance Director, Brian Grimm.
Yes, I'm here.
Community Development Director, David Abel.
Yes, I'm here.
Attorney sitting in for Ron Beatty is Dave Anderson, I believe.
Yes, that's correct. I'm here.
All right, Chief of Police, Paul Falls.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, and again, I'm Lisa Whalen, I'm the mayor. So since this is our first go at this, one of the things I think I need to do is go over just a few procedural things so that we make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak and that everybody has an opportunity to make comments and so on. First, what I'm going to say is we have to, what I'm going to do is I have to go down the line. So staff will give their report, and then I'll go down the line and ask each council person if they have questions or comments. And then I'll go back again and do the same until no one has any more comments or questions, okay? If there's a question, please direct it to the specific individual by name. The reason for that is because we can't see each other, so we want to make sure that, let's say John says, well, I have this question, and then he should say, I have a question for Mike Baroni, okay? And then that way we can identify on the recording who's asking the question and who's giving the answer. When a motion is made, I also need to identify, for you to identify yourselves. So you would say, for instance, Pam Mortensen here, I make that motion. Or Mike Molitor might say, Mike Molitor here, I second that. Okay? Again, so we know for sure who's making the motion and who's making the second. Then for the vote, by law, we have to do this via a roll call. So again, I'll go down the line and I'll say, Shannon, Ms. Bruce, how do you vote? Mr. Chumperland, how do you vote, etc. And we'll take the vote, and it has to be by roll call, and that is by state statute. So going forward, you'll see a few other changes for our next meeting, but I won't go into all those details other than the number for the call-in for the meeting will be listed on the top of the agenda. Okay. Then also, just FYI, so you know, everybody knows, the recording of the meeting will be posted on our website, same as our video recordings. So people don't have to be here at 7 o'clock or have to be listening in at 7 o'clock. They could go on later on if they wanted to hear the meeting. So with that, are there any questions? Ms. Mortensen?
There are no questions.
And Mr. Molitor?
None.
Okay, Mr. Chumperland?
No questions.
Ms. Bruce? Ms. Bruce, did you have any questions?
Oh, sorry, I had my mute button on. No questions.
Okay. All right, thank you. So first item is to approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
This
Shannon
is
Bruce
Pam
here.
Okay.
Pam
Shannon,
Mortensen.
Shannon, go ahead.
Shannon Bruce here. I'll move to approve the agenda.
All right. And Ms. Mortensen, would you like to second that?
I will second that.
All right. Thank you. I know this will be a little challenging at times, so we'll get through it. But motion has been made by Ms. Bruce and seconded by Ms. Mortensen to approve the agenda as presented. Pam, do you vote? How do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Molitor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Tremperlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Bruce, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That's Lisa Whalen, the mayor. So the motion passes 5-0. So we'll move on. We don't have anything else under special presentations. There are no persons to be heard. So we'll move on to our consent agenda item. Are there any items that people would like to remove? And I'll start, Ms. Bruce, do you want to remove any items out of the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to remove item E, the St. Bonnie fire request.
Okay. All right. Any other items? Okay.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Tremperlin, any items you wish to remove?
No.
Okay. Mr. Molitor, any items?
Yes, I'd like to remove item A.
Okay. And Ms. Mortensen, any item?
No.
All right. So with that, that remains consent agenda items. Approve the regular meeting minutes from March 9th. That would be item number B. Item number C is approve claims. Item number D is approve the step increase for Jake Strauss in Public Works. So Ms. Mortensen, how do you vote? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a motion to approve those agenda items, those consent agenda items?
Pam Mortensen makes a motion to approve as listed.
Okay. Is there a second?
John Trumperlin seconds.
All right. Ms. Mortensen made that motion and Mr. Trumperlin seconded. Then Ms. Mortensen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Molitor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Trumperlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Bruce, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that is 5-0 to approve consent agenda items B, C, and D. So we'll start with number A. Mr. Molitor, you had removed item A, and that was approve work session meeting minutes from March 9th.
Yes, thank you. In the second paragraph on the strategic plan update, the paragraph starts with there was discussion on the swamp data software and what reports could be accessed. The next line, the city is willing to help pay for the initial evaluation of each pond. I don't think we've come to a conclusion that we'd be willing to help pay. I think that probably is better stated by saying the city is willing to consider, but I don't think is willing to open for discussion. But this makes it sound as though we've already made that decision, and I don't recall any vote on that policy. So I'd like to see that changed.
Okay, Madam Mayor, this is Chris
Yes.
Lindquist. So if I'm understanding this correctly, should I just insert the word consider? The city is willing to consider to help pay for the initial valuation?
I believe that's what
that was
Mr. Molitor is saying. Go ahead.
Yes, that would work.
Okay,
I just don't want to make it sound like we've already decided, but yes, consider would be appropriate.
okay. I'll add that. This is Chris Lindquist, and I will add that then. I will make that change.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Hold on. I have to ask Ms. Mortensen, are you okay with that change?
Yes,
Any
I agree
comments?
with that statement.
Okay. And Mr. Tremperlin, any comments?
No, I agree with the clarification.
Okay. And Ms. Bruce?
I agree as well, and I'd suggest that we make sure that it's an agenda item, that we actually do schedule a vote for that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it won't be this time.
No,
but
not
it could
today,
be
but
in
it's a future agenda item.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Molitor, would you like to then make a motion to amend those minutes as stated?
This is Mr. Molitor. I make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Pam
This is Shannon
Mortensen
Bruce. I'll
seconds.
second it.
Okay, Pam Mortensen made that second, close second. So with that, Mr. Molitor made the motion to amend those minutes with that change, and Ms. Mortensen seconded that motion. Ms. Mortensen, are you in favor?
Yes.
Mr. Molitor?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Trumperlin
Yes.
and Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm in favor as well, so the motion passes 5-0. So we'll move on to our business items.
No.
I'm
No,
gonna,
no,
I'm sorry. Oh,
no,
I'm
no,
sorry.
you still
I'm
have
sorry.
a few more
Yep,
consent items.
I'm sorry, we have one more. Ms. Bruce, you had requested the City of St. Bonnie Fire Department purchase turnout gear to be removed.
Yes. Yes, thank you. And I'll address this question to Mr. Baroni. I see in our packet that we received a letter from Eric Anderson, who's the new, well, I guess it was a letter from Brenda Fisk on February 20th. And Eric Anderson, the new chief, is requesting that we spend $15,000 of the $19,000 in the St. Bonnie Fire budget reserve to pay for remaining sets of turnout gear. And I'm asking Mr. Baroni on February 20th, knowing that I'm the council liaison for the St. Bonnie Fire Commission, why I wasn't notified of this request then, because we received the council packets on Thursday. I tried to get in touch with Eric Anderson to talk to him about concerns that I had about the budget reserve, because this only leaves $4,400 in the budget reserve, which is less than 2%. And I wanted to have a conversation with him prior to our meeting, and because of the short time frame, I wasn't able to do that. So in the future, when communication comes like this, especially when there's a turnover in fire chiefs, and I would appreciate being notified of this sooner, because I wasn't given enough time to have a discussion with Mr. Chief Anderson to discuss what the need really was. And it sounds like they've got a deal on some turnout gear before the end of April. And I just haven't had a chance to understand the need and the urgency of the need to make a well-informed decision on this. So that's my concern here. And I'm wondering if we can put this off for one more council meeting if there's time to allow for that conversation to occur.
This is Mike Baroni. I don't have an answer for you, Mayor and Council, on this, if there is or isn't time on that particular thing. So I'm not able to give you a definitive answer on if there would be before. I would assume there were, if you're correct in the fact that they have something they want to accomplish price-wise before the end of April, but if it's before the end of March, I would say no. But I couldn't give you that answer for sure, but you can certainly check into it.
Okay, well, if you could check into that and see if we have time. His letter says that the grant expires in April. I don't know when in April that means. Right. I don't know if that's in 2 weeks, in 4 weeks. And I hesitate not to take a vote on this. I want you to understand if the position it puts us in when we're not notified of things we need to know in a timely manner.
Ms. Bruce, maybe one suggestion, maybe I think we're probably all on the same page that we wouldn't be against such a purchase because it's for the safety of the firefighters. I think your concern is one, being notified in a more timely manner, and maybe you have some additional questions. Like you said, what if we didn't do it now and then maybe we don't meet that deadline? Is there a possibility to approve this with the caveat that if the deadline is beyond April 6th, we could bring it back for discussion? I mean, is that an option?
I think that's a great idea if we can do that. And I agree. I'm not inclined to withhold the funds if this is an urgent need that is critical and we're going to lose an opportunity. But if we can explore it a little further, I'd appreciate that. And if Mr. Barone can call Chief Anderson and find out, and maybe we can make a motion to approve it based on if there's an opportunity to put it off for another week, another meeting.
Right. That's what I'm saying is if they need an approval prior to April 6th, we would then maybe the motion, and you could word it any way you'd like, but maybe the motion would be something to the effect of, we approve this if the decision needs to be made prior to April 6th. If we can get more information and then discuss it some more at the April 6th meeting, we would prefer that. Is that a legitimate, Mr. Barone, would that be legal?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, could we ask the attorney, because it doesn't...
Okay, good idea.
Yeah, this is Dave Anderson from Kennedy and Graven. Thanks, Madam Mayor and Council. I think that's perfectly fine. I think you can make a motion to conditionally approve this purchase. The only condition being if for some reason that price, that the quote that they got is going to expire prior to your next meeting, then it's approved. And if that price is not going to be expiring before that next meeting date, then you can discuss it and determine what you'd like to do at that next meeting. So a very long-winded answer, but I think it can be as simple as a short motion to that effect. But I would base the condition specifically on whether the price itself expires, because it sounds like that's the only concern we have here.
The other concern, this is Mayor Whalen, the only other caveat I would say is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's a grant involved. So if the price changes or the grant goes away, I would add those two caveats.
That's fair enough.
Okay, is that okay with you, Ms. Bruce?
Yes, yeah. In fact, his letter just references the grant expiring in April, and we just need to know the date of the expiration,
right.
And that's what it should be contingent on. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion then, Ms. Bruce? Oh, wait, I should ask. Okay. Hold on just a second. I have to ask, Ms. Mortensen, do you have any comments or questions?
No, that is fine.
Okay, and Mr. Molitor?
Yes, I do. This is for turnout gear. I'm kind of wondering, isn't this supposed to be budgeted as like normal maintenance items that they buy in some type of a schedule? It just seems like this is now the second time that I've seen in my time on the council where I get something from the St. Bonnie Fire Department that says, "Ooh, we've got a special or a sale or a grant or something. Let's go buy this." We had the same issue with the boat. I realize they're not a big fire department, but it seems like something like gear would be on a recurring schedule that we would buy without having to have a separate motion. I think that, I guess that's a general comment. I'd probably direct that to Mr. Barone to get feedback to St. Bonnie to say, I'd like to see this on a little bit more of a planned basis, not special need that we have to act on quickly. So if you're going to have that conversation, Mr. Barone, with the fire department regarding the timing, then I would appreciate it if you would insert that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chamberlain?
I'm comfortable with both Ms. Bruce and Mr. Molitor's concerns.
Yeah. Okay. So Ms. Bruce, you can make the motion if you'd like.
Okay, I'll move to approve this. Is it a resolution?
With the two caveats.
Approve the resolution with the caveat that if the grant expires before our next meeting, that it's approved. But if it expires after our next meeting, we'll delay it to a vote at our next meeting.
Okay, all right. Is there a second then to that motion?
John Chumpel, and I would second that.
All right. So Ms. Bruce made that motion and Mr. Chamberlain seconded that. Ms. Bruce, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mr. Trumperlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Molitor, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Ms. Mortensen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm Lisa Whalen. I vote yes as well. So motion passes 5-0. Hopefully we'll see this back at our next meeting. All right, that does, I believe, conclude all of our consent agenda items. So we'll move on to our business items. First item is the statement and determination regarding conducting meetings by telephone or other electronic means. Maybe I'll have Mr. Anderson just give us a brief overview of this, the legalities of it, and so on. Would you, Mr. Anderson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Obviously, there was a statement and a declaration signed by you, Madam Mayor, providing for council meetings and all other city commissions, boards, and other, city body meetings to be conducted via telephone pursuant to the statutory exception to the open meeting law. And that's why we're all, of course, on this call together. That is a decision under the state statute that only the mayor, the chief administrative officer of the city, or the city's chief legal counsel can make. Of course, in this case, the mayor made that declaration, I think, with the full support of both the city attorney, Mr. Beatty, as well as city administrator Baroni. And what it allows and what it requires is that meetings are held just this way, via telephone or other electronic means, until the emergency or pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, is over with. This is a very unique situation that we're dealing with. Luckily, the statute, being the open meeting law, afforded cities and other public bodies with this sort of exception to allow us to continue meeting, to obviously conduct business, critical business that needs to be conducted, like paying your bills and making other decisions that are critical, some being even more critical due to the underlying nature of the emergency. So if anyone has any questions about the exception itself, I can answer them, but all meetings from here on out until otherwise will be conducted in this format. And, I think from what I can tell so far, everybody is adjusting to it, and I'm very happy to hear everybody on this call. It's been a unique experience dealing with, other cities as they try to adapt and pivot to these new times. But I credit everybody on this call for being available and making it work. And, hopefully we can get through this and we'll be able to soon meet in person sometime. But
okay.
I'll leave my comments at that.
All right, thank you. This is not an action item. In other words, we're not going to be voting on it because this isn't a council decision, but I would like to open it up. If any of the council members have questions, I'll go down the line and you can ask Mr. Anderson any questions you'd like. Ms. Mortensen, any questions?
No.
Okay, Mr. Molitor?
No.
Okay, Mr. Trumperlin?
No.
Ms. Bruce?
No.
All right, so we'll move on to the next item that's on the agenda. This too is not an action item or where we need to take a vote. It is has already been declared actually prior to this meeting. It actually went into effect today, the 23rd. But again, I think I'll just have Mr. Anderson give us a brief overview of why we did this. And also maybe, Mr. Anderson, if you could explain a little bit in terms of declaring this emergency, what does this do for the city? Mr. Anderson?
Sure. Thank you again, Madam Mayor. As everybody knows, the governor has already declared a statewide peacetime emergency under his express statutory authority. A lot of cities have sort of grappled with, is it worthwhile to declare a local emergency as well? We attorneys have also sort of been grappling with that question, but there are certain contractual terms out there that many cities have entered into that actually require the city to declare a local emergency in order to enact those sort of emergency procedures, certain joint agreements with other entities for emergency services, other emergency plan provisions can be triggered by this. And, one of the main reasons, too, that I think it makes good sense for the city to declare a local emergency and for the council to, approve the continuation of it is that in the event that there are emergency expenditures by the city, there could be opportunities for federal money, whether it be from FEMA or other federal agencies, to recover or get reimbursement for those expenses. This is obviously a much different sort of emergency than, your traditional natural disaster, tornado, other things, floods, where you need physical things like sandbags. But, we don't really know where this is going to go, and it's better safe than sorry in our viewpoint. And so, I think declaring a local emergency is a very good step, and it really, like I said, covers the city's bases in the event that there are things out there that we can do that might require this sort of emergency declaration to happen ahead of time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions by the council? Ms. Bruce, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I'm trying to understand. Did you say that this isn't up for a vote of the council, so the council doesn't have a say in this?
I think right now, and sorry to jump in, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that
Anderson, yeah.
Thank you. This on the agenda is just maybe a informative piece that is going to let the council know that the mayor did declare a local emergency, and I believe next on the agenda is a resolution that would continue it, because under state statute, the mayor's declaration of a local emergency cannot last longer than 3 days without council approval. And so maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but that resolution will be next, Councilmember Bruce.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I guess I understand. Yes, I understand the resolution for the 3 days. And I'm assuming we'll get an opportunity to talk about the continuance of the resolution.
Yes.
Or should I talk about
absolutely.
that now?
Well, why don't we first go through this? So if you have any questions of Mr. Anderson regarding the current emergency and that's in place, and then we're going to move to the next business item, and that is the extension of it. So that would be the next item.
All right. I'll wait till then. Thank you.
Okay. So Mr. Chamberlain, do you have any questions on this item of Mr. Anderson or staff?
Yes, I do. Just a general question. So in this case, the 3-day notice, local emergency, only needs to be initiated by the mayor, from what I'm hearing. And is the thought behind that in that it's a quick fix thing, and that normally you wouldn't have the time to put it through in front of the council, or what's the logic behind that? Or the legal behind it?
No, that's exactly right. The statute provides...
Mr. Anderson. I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson is speaking. Go ahead.
Yes, I need to start introducing myself. You think I would be used to this by now? The statute contemplates the mayor having the ability to do it very quickly in order for, in certain situations, cities to act very quickly on responding to emergencies. One thing, for example, that the emergency declaration triggers is it gives the ability to the city to bypass certain municipal contracting laws, going out and getting quotes or bids on things when you need to act very quickly, and it does not make any sense practically whatsoever to go through those steps to respond to an emergency situation. And so that's why the statute does require the mayor to unilaterally make the decision. In this case, I don't think there was anything, there was no reason to do that in any way, that wouldn't otherwise require or give the council the ability to respond to it, which is why the emergency declaration that the mayor signed went into effect at exactly the time the meeting started tonight, so that the council could immediately consider the resolution to continue it.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Molitor, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Mortensen, any questions?
This question is for Dave Anderson. You had mentioned the positive side of doing this declaration. Are there any negatives?
None that I have identified, and none that our firm has identified. You know, we as city attorneys have been going back and forth on this for the last 2 weeks, as I'm sure you can all imagine, and we have not identified one downside to a city declaring and continuing a local emergency during a time of a statewide emergency. And so no.
Okay.
Thank you.
And any other questions regarding this issue, Mr. Molitor?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Trumperlin?
No.
Ms. Bruce?
We're talking about the extension of the declaration?
No, that's coming up next.
Okay.
Okay.
No.
All right. All right. So now coming up, we're going to talk about the extension of the local emergency. So again, I'm going to hand it over first to Mr. Anderson, maybe to give us some ideas to the extension and what that will do for the city. And then maybe I can also ask Mr. Baroni after Mr. Anderson's statement to weigh in as well. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, this is Dave Anderson. So without repeating myself too much, I guess I would say the reason to continue this would be to provide the city the opportunity to get any benefit from it that they could in terms of federal dollars or any invocation of necessary portions of your emergency operations plan. The city has one of those, as most, or if not all cities have. The city also has a pandemic response plan. I am not intimately familiar with either one of those documents as they relate to Minnetrista, but I do know that it's not uncommon for certain things within those agreements to require a local emergency. Many of those documents, I think, are almost drafted or crafted in a way that assumes that most emergencies are going to be local in nature, although you do occasionally see some large-scale emergencies like, war, for example, or, a pandemic, like a health pandemic like this. Those are far less common than natural disasters and other much more localized emergencies. And so a lot of the plans that the city has in place for dealing with emergencies have language in them that are only triggered by the city declaring a local emergency. And so, again, the reason to continue it would be to provide a way to invoke some of those provisions. I don't want to put City Administrator Baroni on the spot, certainly, but he may know a little bit about some things in those plans. I don't know if he wants to touch on those or not, but I think it does make very good sense to continue the local emergency given what we're all dealing with, given, I think, the direction this is headed, and, all of those things that I'm sure you're all very well aware of.
Okay. Mr. Baroni, would you care to weigh in at all?
This is Mike Baroni. I think most of the sharing that we do related to a declaration of this kind would be related to our public safety area. It's pretty common for public safety, even when in large departments where they have all their own services, police, fire, et cetera, to still have agreements like this. And I know we're a little smaller. We already have agreements based around the fact that we're smaller and we share police department with St. Bonnie and fire department with 2 other cities. So I don't know if Chief Falls wants to chime in at all, but generally most of the things that trigger our action on a local emergency are going to be public safety related.
Okay. Chief Falls, do you care to add anything?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Chief Falls here. That is absolutely right. I think, as you know, we have a shared emergency management plan with the Lakes Area Group, which is really no different than large cities that have their own. Much of the language is identical. I guess because we're smaller, we choose to share with other agencies, but it functions identically to the bigger cities. And so by declaring a local emergency and then extending that makes perfect sense from an emergency management perspective, given the fact that the president has declared a national emergency and the governor has declared a state emergency, just to continue that, because the issues that we're facing in this particular case are very different than we would normally see. For instance, if we had a tornado go through, that emergency is local and kind of feeds up from local to county to state and federal. And this one kind of is going the opposite direction. I guess in a nutshell, this is different because it changes from day to day and it's going to be very long term. So we're not really sure what we're going to have to deal with days or weeks down the road. And so having this declaration in place and extending it just gives the city the ability to make decisions quickly if necessary. Certainly, we don't necessarily have to make them quickly, but if we do, you have the ability to do that, and you don't have to go through and create a declaration at that time. So does that answer your question?
Okay. Well, I'm not sure we have any questions yet, but I think they're coming. So hold on.
Okay.
Ms. Bruce, I think you said you had some questions. Ms. Bruce, are you still there?
Yes, sorry, my mute button was on. Sorry, I've got a dog barking.
Okay. You had questions.
I was looking at I was looking at the resolution, and in the resolution, I believe it's the third whereas, where it talks about deviation from standard procedures for procuring goods and services. And I'm trying to imagine what kinds of goods and services, given this pandemic, would be required. And I'm coming up with a blank. And maybe Chief Falls or Mr. Brony can speak to that. And what might those goods and services be that we're waiving standard procedures for?
Mr. Baroni or Mr. Falls? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Falls.
Chief Falls here. I'd be happy to answer that. I think, first of all, that's a great question. And in this particular case, some things that come to mind would be personal protective equipment would be one. And also, I guess, biohazard type cleaning services if we were to have a contamination of, for example, the booking area. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of this information that we have is evolving and changing as all the experts continue to learn more about this virus. And so the procedures for dealing with it and protecting yourself and cleaning up or sanitizing are changing, and we're not quite sure where that's going to go. But in the event we would have to, for example, get our booking area decontaminated, that could be costly. I don't know at this point. We're kind of looking into that, so we have some idea if that should be needed in the future. But that would be one example that I can think of off the top of my head.
Mr. Brony, do you care to make any comments regarding that question?
Yes, this is Mike Baroni. I agree with Chief Falls. It's kind of evolving, as it states even in the declaration resolution. It could be equipment or things of that nature in order for city staff to work at home. I just don't know exactly what it could be because we just don't know how long this is going to go on. But I can tell you this, I'm just not going to figure out, I'll try to figure out a way to make sure that anything that is kind of beyond the normal scope of our budgeting process gets a chance to be reviewed by the city council. I'm not going to really take this unless I feel like it's such an emergency that I can't wait, but I'm not going to take this local emergency and this whole COVID virus thing to kind of do whatever I feel like I want to do. That's not the way I operate. That's why nobody operates at the city of Minnetrista on our staff. We're very cognizant of the fact that, you know, we have a budget and we're going to try to stick to it. But if it does come to a time where we are going to need some additional equipment or goods or whatever, as the chief talked about or I mentioned, you know, I would certainly like to be able to run that by the city council for approval versus just go out on my own and do it. But if it is of such an emergency-based nature, I would certainly do it. But because I don't want to put in have any city staff be in jeopardy of anything.
Okay.
My goal is to make sure that anything that's kind of deviating from the budget to have a council approval, but unless absolutely necessary. So,
I have a question. This is Mayor Whalen, maybe for the chief. Do you know if we invoke this extension for the emergency situation, do we also position ourselves for potential federal dollars should they become available? That was a question to Chief Falls. Okay.
Okay, Chief Falls here. Yes, Madam Mayor. I think that absolutely would, certainly if those funds become available down the road, this puts us in a much better position to recover some or all of those expenses. And we just, at this point, due to the scope of this, we have no idea how much or if funds will be available down the road. But certainly we are tracking any expenses that are related to COVID-19 at the police department. And as far as staff time, we haven't, fortunately, we don't have any additional expenses incurred there yet. But one of the requirements to be reimbursed through FEMA is to be able to demonstrate through your emergency plans that it was an emergency, and declaring the emergency obviously is a big piece of that. So not just at the state or federal level, but also the local level. So.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bruce, did you have further questions, comments?
No, my goal is just to get a better understanding of what this resolution means and what it provides for, and I'm fine with the resolution the way it is. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Mr. Chamberlain, do you have any questions or concerns or comments? No. Okay. No. Mr. Molitor?
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Mortensen?
Just one real quick question. If the city does not make this declaration right now, you're saying we would not be able to get any federal funding if we need it, if we do not make this declaration, right?
I think that's Mr.
This is Dave Anderson. That's not necessarily true. It could be true. And what I think is important to keep in mind, there could be expenses incurred between now and when a declaration potentially would then have to be made again, that you potentially could lose out on federal funds for. So I think that hopefully sort of answers your question. There's very much a lot of uncertainty around what sorts of expenditures might qualify for federal reimbursement. And, you know, I think doing this would really get you one step closer to getting that in the end, because there have been situations in the past where the feds, whether it's through FEMA or otherwise, have absolutely required a local emergency before the city would be able to be reimbursed for any expense.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And I just wanted to make one other statement. I really appreciate the expertise and the advice from Dave Anderson, Mike Baroni, and Paul Falls, because they are the experts in this, and I totally trust their judgment. And Mayor Whalen as well.
All right. Thank you. So any other comments or questions?
I'll just make one
right.
additional comment. This is Mike Baroni again. So just so council's aware, we've already taken steps to make sure that we are tracking any additional beyond the norm expenses that's mostly occurred in police and public works, trying to buy additional gloves and hand sanitizer if they can get it and things of that nature. So they're already in the process of tracking all that. And then the other thing that we're doing for those of us that are working from home, we're adding to our timesheets a line that says, you know, you may still work 8 hours in a given day, but we're going to have employees track those hours on a separate line that will say COVID-19 work from home or something of that nature, because there are going to be some cases where some employees will have to go in to the office to do things because there's equipment there that needs to be done, run in order to do their job. An example of that would be printing utility bills. You can't print those from home. You have to go in and do those. So, you know, we'll schedule time so there's people not around, so you might be the only one there. So we're not giving each other the virus if we unknowingly have it. But the whole idea is to be able to track our time. Again, if something does happen down the road where there's an opportunity for federal reimbursement, we'll be prepared to document our time fully.
Okay, thank you. So this is an action item. We do need a motion and we need to pass a resolution. And it's in your packet. It's the City Council approves resolution number 034-2020 under Minnesota Statutes 12.29 to extend the period of a mayor declared local emergency. Anybody wish to make that motion?
Pam Mortensen here. I will make that motion.
Okay, Ms. Mortensen, thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
John Trumple, and I'll second that.
Okay, a motion has been made by Ms. Mortensen and seconded by Mr. Trumperlin. Is there any further questions or discussion? If you have, just say you do. Okay, if not, Ms. Bruce, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mr. Trumperlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Molitor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mortensen, how do you vote?
Yes.
I'm Lisa Whalen. I vote yes as well. So the motion passes 5-0. So we'll move on. That concludes our business items. We'll move on to administrative items. Mr. Baroni, I believe do you have anything?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is Mike Baroni. I do have a few items to discuss, and in addition to that, listed on your agenda, we have the city engineer to talk about a letter to Halstead Drive residents, but I also believe we will add Chief Falls, who'll give a short update about the hiring process for our newest police officer, since it's in the background investigation. Then I believe Mr. Abel is going to talk a little bit about the technical advisory meeting from Pioneer Sarah Creek. I think that was a request of one of our council members to talk about that. So Mr. Abel, you should be prepared for that. So my items, I have 3 items. I did have a chance to talk with 2 of our 4 council members and the mayor today. And some of the questions I got from Councilmember Mulder were great questions on kind of the status updates for where we are in a lot of our engineering projects. And so what I think we're going to do moving forward is I've talked with Ms. Fauski, and she's been giving staff every other week updates in written format for us on status on all the projects that are going on. And I think what we're going to try to do is kind of give a version of that for city council and send that to you every other week. I believe the goal is to have it out the week of council meetings. I think just by schedule, the 2-week schedule that Allison has been maintaining, one is due out this week. I think the whole point of doing this would be to give council information on items that are essentially like non-voting items. There's not going to be a vote coming up on any of this, but at least it'll keep council at least on an every other week basis give you an update on where we're at on things, whether it's the ramp situation or the subcontractor out on Enchanted or whatever the situation. We're going to try to give you something. That way we don't have to spend a lot of time on the telephone here on Monday, Council Mondays, going through that. And we can certainly answer questions if you have them after getting those. But the idea is just to keep you up to date that fashion. Another item, second item that I have is working from home. A lot of cities are, including us, are close their city hall and all their other facilities, senior centers, if you have them, community centers, all that kind of stuff. And so, this is still evolving for us since we're kind of, I would say, late to the party, but we started late last week on strategizing and implementing work from home. And we're still in the process of doing that. So it might seem a little loose to you right now, but we're working on it. City staff is, for the most part, working from home. There are some exceptions, and it's mostly for essential employees. Essential employees basically are police, fire, some public works areas, not all, but most. And that would incorporate our public works area, and then, of course, our building inspections area. And so these are all evolving. And of course, a lot of those areas include union contracts. And so we are not required under the management rights clause in all of our contracts to get anybody from the union's permission in order to change work schedules, et cetera. But it's really a good idea to work with our labor leaders in those unions to try to get their buy-in on it. There's a lot of hard feelings. And most of the time, what we're going to come up with, and I don't know exactly what it is yet, but what we come up with, I'm sure they're going to be fine with. Right now, that would probably apply more to public works. I know Chief Falls has done a great job of trying to let his people know that, in the event that one of their officers or more than one of the officers contracts the virus in the line of duty or just not at work, they may have to switch around their shifts. So they've already talked about it. We're working on that. Gary and I didn't get a chance to talk person to person today, but we exchanged a few emails, and I'm setting up a meeting with the Local 49 business agent to discuss scheduling either Tuesday or Wednesday. We hopefully will be implementing that relatively soon. So the idea is to not put people that work for the city in harm's way, but at least be able to minimize their opportunity for contracting this thing by spreading them out, working them on different shifts or different days or whatever. And then the final thing violates the last thing I talk about, but Allie Polfus is starting her job tomorrow with us as the Director of Administration. So even though I work from home today, I'm going in tomorrow to meet with Allie to try to get her paperwork processed so she can get on her payroll and get her benefit situation situated, and also talk to her about some things. And I think I'm going to try to turn her around and have her work at home after that. There's plenty of things she can do from home. I can do it from home, but I think, it's going to make, our learning curve a little longer than normal that maybe I would have liked. But, but if there are things I have to go in for to meet with her, I certainly will. But like I said, I will be there tomorrow to meet with her and get her going. So with that, Mayor,
okay.
It's all I have for.
Okay. Council, let's start with Mr. Molitor. Any questions of Mr. Baroni?
So when should we expect to see that update from Allison on the projects that you were talking about? I think that's a great idea. I just was wondering when we get the first one.
Well, I believe, Mayor and Council Member, this is Mike Baroni. I believe that Allison can correct me if I'm wrong, but she was scheduled to put one out on Friday, and we're going to talk either Wednesday or Thursday so I can see the draft of it, and then we can, kind of winnow it down to what's probably most important on the list, the top number of projects that are going on, and then we'll send that out from there. So should be by the end of this week.
Okay, by the end of this week. Okay. Mr. Chamberlain, any questions?
No.
Okay. Ms. Bruce, any questions?
I just had one question, and maybe Ms. Fauski is going to talk about the Halstead Drive project and the email that we got from the residents there this last week.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I don't have anything else then.
All right. And Ms. Mortensen, anything?
Yeah, if we need to reach anyone, I assume email would probably be the best, but phone numbers, do we have cell phone numbers or something if we have to talk to someone on staff?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, good idea. Mr. Brody, could somebody put together a list of contact names with numbers of staff?
Mayor and Council, this is Mike Baroni. Yes, I can do that. I can put together telephone numbers for both city council members and city staff members. I was kind of doing the same thing with our staff last week. I didn't have some people carry 2 cell phones, one for work, one for home. Some people like myself have just one number. I don't care if you want to call my cell, that's fine. If it's work or personal, it doesn't matter. But we'll put together a list and ask our staff to give their preferred telephone number in that. We'll provide that.
All right, thank you. All right, any other questions of Mr. Baroni? Otherwise, we'll move on to Ms. Fauske. All right, Ms. Fauske,
Thank you.
You're on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Council, as we received the email last week with the resident expressing concerns with getting a water service connection on Halstead Drive, I've been drafting a response, getting some background information, and intend to get a letter out to those residents this week. I did respond back to the resident who emailed the question, indicating that I would get a response out early this week so that she was aware of what the timeline is. And the letter starts out with a background with the intent to provide advance notice for the residents. We sent those notices out in October of 2019 and February of 2020, and reiterated that if residents aren't able or do not desire to make a connection at this time, that they would have the ability to do so in 5 years is the time frame that we've talked about. I go on to explain that the contract has been awarded. So the contractor does intend to get work started as soon as possible. We don't have a start date yet, but the contractor has indicated a desire to get in there and get the work done and get out as soon as possible in that project area. And then I also provide a little bit of history of the water main installation and why water services weren't installed at that time. Some of the council may recall the installation method used to get that water main in was a trenchless technology, meaning that there were pits on each side of where the water main would be pushed or pulled through, and with the desire of just getting the water main in to connect the central and the south water systems. And the reason services weren't installed at that time is discussions for the Halstead Drive reconstruction project began right around that same time. And this portion of Halstead Drive was included in the original project area. However, after the first, from what I could tell, the first public information meeting held in May 2016, there was opposition to including that segment from approximately Lakeside Drive to County Road 110. So that's why it was removed. So provide a little bit of background to the residents who perhaps weren't in the area at the time, or maybe didn't know why the project came off the Halstead Drive reconstruction. And then finally, just to answer the questions that were posed in the email, I do provide an explanation as far as the city maintaining a water service from the water main to the curb stop to try to answer that question. So I want to get this one wrapped up tomorrow and get a signature on this so that we can get it out and work with either city staff, or I can work with our administrative staff at WSB to get this mailing out to the residents and answer some questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fauske. So I'll start with Ms. Bruce. You indicated you had a question.
I think Ms. Fauske answered them all. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Tremperlin, do you have any questions?
No questions.
All right, and Mr. Molitor?
I do have one question. Ms. Fauci, I assume that somewhere in the letter you're probably reiterating that once again, this is not we're not requesting or demanding that anyone hook up to city water. This is entirely voluntary on their part.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure that's clear. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. And Ms. Mortensen?
Will the council members be able to see the final draft of the letter that is going out to the residents?
Ms. Fauci?
That's certainly an option if that's something the council would like to see before it goes out. I can, once I'm ready to get a draft out, I can send it out to the council beforehand and ask for feedback if that's the council's desire.
Sure, I think
I'd
fine.
like to see it. Yeah.
Okay.
I know Ms. Fauci has been, this is Mayor Whalen, I know Ms. Fauci has been working with staff. Mr. Baroni, I've spoken to her a number of times as well. So hopefully by the time you see the final draft, it'll be pretty much exactly what you want. So, but nonetheless, Ms. Fauci can send that out for your comments. If you do get it, I would like to ask that you please make any comments immediately, because we would like to get this out sooner than later. So, all right.
This is Shannon.
Yes?
I'm sorry, this is Shannon Bruce. And I just wanted to say that for me, I would just like to see the copy of the letter after it goes out. I'm not sure I need to comment on it. And maybe we should just poll the council. My concern is delaying this when I know these residents are waiting, and I'm not certain that there are even going to be any comments on the draft. I just want to confirm with Ms. Mortensen that maybe she was just wanting to get a copy of the letter, or did she really want to see a draft and make comments on it?
I can answer that. I just wanted to see it in case we get any residents commenting or sending us emails directly to us, so we know what it was in that letter.
Oh,
so a copy
okay,
Mayor.
Yeah. Okay, Mayor Whalen here. That we can do. That would be quite simple. As soon as it's done and it's mailed out, or even right before the day it's mailed out, we can get an email with a copy of it. That
Perfect.
wouldn't be a problem. And I agree with Ms. Bruce. We don't want to delay this any further. It's already been a while, but we did notify them that this was coming, so they're aware that we're going to be addressing their questions, and so they're waiting for it. So maybe that's the approach we'll take then. Okay, Ms. Fauci, are you good with that?
I am. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next, we have Chief Falls. You wanted to make a few comments?
Yes, Chief Falls here, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Just a brief update on our hiring process. As you know, we have been in the hiring process for a police officer for some time now, and due to current events and just generally being very, very busy otherwise, the background investigation piece did take quite a bit longer than we had anticipated. But with that said, we have pretty much completed it. And so we are ready now to move on to the psychological evaluation stage. As luck would have it, Martin McAllister is in the process of moving from one facility downtown to a new facility in Edina. That should take place. They should be open for business again as of April 1st. So the plan now is to make an appointment for our candidates in the next couple of weeks and get that piece taken care of. And then if that is successfully completed, then we would move on to the physical exam piece and then move forward from there. So I guess that's about it.
Chief Falls, Mayor Whalen here. Question: do you foresee that any of this could be stalled indefinitely because of the COVID-19? I mean, can the candidate will the candidate be able to get in for all these exams?
Mayor Whalen, that's a great question. Most places are reducing their services. However, by appointment, most of them are still making provisions to continue with services. We haven't made that call yet because of the move that they had planned for this time, and so I don't know that until I talk to them. I will also share that staff and I have discussed the field training process as well, which is a pretty close quarters type of thing for a lot of it. And so we have obviously some concerns related to what's currently going on about that piece. I will certainly keep the council updated as we move forward. If I find that we have to delay the psychological or physical, or certainly the FTO piece is down the road, I think we will delay that a bit, at least till we know more. But if I run into delays along the way, I'll certainly keep you notified, and we'll do the best we can.
Okay, thank you. Council, any other questions of Chief Falls? Mr. Molitor?
Yes. You mentioned that the psychological exam happens and then the physical, so sequential process. Couldn't those be done at the same time? I mean, I get the psychological exam place, they're moving and they have logistical issues, but couldn't we also be doing the physical exam at the same time so that we're kind of speeded up things?
That is a good question. The reason that we do the psychological first is each of these pieces are fairly expensive. And so where we typically see issues with candidates, if we're going to, typically with young, healthy candidates, we don't run into any issues or haven't in the physical. And so the psychological is the piece where if someone's going to get tripped up in the process, that's typically where it happens for whatever reason. Because as you know, not everybody is in the position to be a police officer. And so that's why we've always done the psychological piece first. And then rather than sending them through both and creating all of that expense only to find out that they didn't pass the first piece, historically, we've kind of spaced them out a little bit. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
This is Mike Baroni. I'll just chime in. I'm going to kind of hybridize the comment that Mr. Molitor made with Chief Falls. Yes, we don't want to put the physical stuff because this woman is probably fairly fit. She's young. I'm sure she doesn't have too many maladies. But I think what we could probably do to speed it up is if once we find out when the psychological is scheduled, maybe we can schedule the physical so we don't have to actually, it could be like a week later, because I don't know what kind of timeline some of these occupational medicine groups are operating under. And so I do know that in addition to moving, the Art McAllister, our consulting psychologist, they've been fairly busy as well. So so maybe we can just at least try to get it scheduled, but after the psych, and if we have to cancel, we'll cancel.
Yes, Paul Falls here again. Mr. Baroni, yes, that's exactly what my thoughts as well. It's not that we're going to hold off to do anything until the psych, but just scheduling them far enough apart that if the first piece doesn't work out, we can cancel the second piece. It can certainly be scheduled. And my hope is that when I contact these places, they will be open for business and able to accommodate us in a fairly timely fashion. But I just don't know at this point.
Okay. All right. Mayor Whalen here. Are there any, Ms. Mortensen, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. And Mr. Tremperlin?
No.
Okay. And Ms. Bruce?
Just one. Is this a replacement of a head count or a new head count for public safety?
Replacement.
Yes, this is a replacement.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, I don't have any questions, so I think that concludes Chief's report. So we move on to Mr. Abel.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. David Abel speaking here. Just going to give a quick update. A week ago today, the Pioneer Sarah Creek held their first TAC meeting for their 4th gen plan. I think we all can remember Mr. Schemplin's brought up that they've started this process, and they did hold their first TAC meeting. Similar to what we're doing here, it was a teleconference meeting, so everyone was on the phone and able to chime in. There was a lot of talk about discussion about what's worked well in the past with the Pioneer Sarah Creek Commission. They talked a lot about ways that interactions can work well and ways that they can improve with the commission working with its staff and the communities within it. They were looking for ideas on ways to partner on things in the future. They talked a lot about that, about ways to take advantage of future projects, whether it's a city project or a Pioneer Sarah project, to see if there's ways to partner up with those sorts of things. They did also bring up, they still do have an alum treatment idea slated for Whaletail Lake sometime in the next couple of years. That there's not much more information on that. That's been listed in their plan, as the council may recall, for quite some time. So that still is there at this point. They did get out here just today. They have a draft of some of the problems, issues, priorities, and strategies that were identified at this first TAC meeting. They're asking for some comments on those, and there is another doodle out to schedule the second TAC meeting, which I would assume is going to be done through a teleconference as the first one was. So they're working on it, and the TAC meetings are the first one's gone well, and I would assume more of those to come. And we, as we did with the third gen plan, we pull in our usually at some point we'll pull in someone who specializes in water like this from WSB to give some of the more technical comments. But up to this point, it's been myself and Nick listening in on these TAC meetings. So with that, certainly stand for any questions.
Mayor Whalen here. Thank you, Mr. Abel. So just for reference, TAC means Technical Advisory Committee. I know the water world has a lot of acronyms, and some people may not be familiar with all of them. So I'm assuming you're the quotes unquote official committee member at this point, then, you and Nick, Mr. Abel?
Yes, correct. Yep, correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chamberlain, anything you care to add?
Probably the only thing would be in our meeting, our regular meeting, then that followed on that Thursday, Ms. Spector from
Wank.
Yeah. Too many of them. They were not overly enthusiastic, or she was not overly enthusiastic about the participation in the TAC. But we also, and I guess I could cover mine right here too, our meeting on Thursday night then with the regular Pioneer Sarah Creek, 3.5 hour long discussion, teleconference, virtual, and some, covered a lot of the TAC discussion and the full-blown fourth gen plan they were working on. And I know they were not, they want more involvement from the cities, and I guess I'm kind of on that side as well, but I think they keep wanting Pioneer to come up with projects and the cities to come up with projects, and I just don't necessarily agree with that, but they're not going to create something if there isn't an issue. And of course, following on that is trying to get as obviously most of our city that's in Pioneer Sarah Creek is predominantly rural, urban rural. It's getting the farmers involved with coming forward with projects. And so, but I know it's an ongoing process. As Mr. Abel said, there will be another TAC meeting coming up here in the not too distant future. So appreciate Mr. Abel and Nick being involved in this.
Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain. Also have any questions of Mr. Abel? Ms. Mortensen?
You had mentioned Whaletail project, and if I remember right, it's fairly expensive. For our budgeting purposes, do we know when they're planning on doing something on Whaletail?
John Chamberlain, and I can probably answer that. It's been on the agenda as it's those of you that have served before me, it has been on the CIP plan for a number of years. In fact, I think a sheet that I looked at, it was listed in 2017 or 18, and it keeps getting pushed back because there's higher priorities, or the dollars available for the priorities are being used in a certain way. This year they had a huge project at Baker Park on Lake Independence. So right now, to the best of my knowledge, it is listed for 2022.
Okay. Yeah, good question. Good to know if that really does happen, then we need to at least look at what our portion might be and how we're going to pay for it. Yeah. Mr. Molitor, any questions?
I have no questions. I just want to just make a comment that I appreciate your stance, Mr. Chamberlain, on not going to fish for more projects, pardon the pun, but I think that's appropriate, your stance on that, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. Good. Ms. Bruce?
I'll second that or third that. I don't believe in creating projects for project's sake. Regarding the alum treatment on Whaletail Lake, I think we had the guy that was the engineer before he retired. He came out and spoke to the council, and I remember one of the questions I asked him was if he could predict the effect of an alum treatment and how much it would improve the water quality. And at that time, he really didn't sound overly confident that it would make much of an impact on Whaletail Lake. And in the future, if we do consider an alum treatment on Whaletail, I'd like to bring whoever is in that position now back to the council to brief us and give us more confidence in what we might find from that alum treatment or not as it gets closer. So just a note to follow up on that when the time comes.
Yeah. Good comment. The other, that was a gentleman from Three Rivers. He was the water resource specialist or director for Three Rivers at the time. Maybe that position has now changed, but nonetheless, so I know Three Rivers has done an alum treatment on Rebecca Lake. They, and I don't know that they had done it at that time. So I think they would have more data now, whether it's good or bad, to share with the council when this time comes. So that would be something we can definitely be looking at. I think they've done alum treatments in a number of other lakes and places. So at least we'd have something to be looking at. So, all right. With that,
I'll just jump in quick, Madam Mayor, Madam Mayor and Council. David Abel here. That's absolutely correct. I do know of several metro area lakes that have had alum treatments done to them. Every lake's a little bit different, so you might get some different results depending upon the depth and everything that goes with that. But just to add to your point, I'm sure there's much more data and examples out there than there was back when we had that discussion with the council. So just wanted to chime in quick. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that concludes our staff reports. We can then move on to our council reports. I have none, so I'll move it on to Ms. Mortensen.
I have none either.
Okay. Mr. Molitor?
I have none as well.
All right. And Mr. Chamberlain, you gave a report. Anything else you need to add?
No.
All right. And Ms. Bruce?
I have none.
All right. So then I believe that concludes our first phone meeting. It went rather well. I'm proud of all of you. You did a great job. So thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Pam Mortensen here to make the motion.
All right. Is there a second?
It's Mike Molitor. I'll make the second.
All right. Ms. Mortensen made a motion to adjourn and Mr. Molitor seconded. So again, we have to do a roll call. Ms. Mortensen, what is your vote?
Yes.
Mr. Molitor?
Yes.
Mr. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
And I'm Lisa Whalen, the mayor. My vote is yes. So we are officially, it's 5-0. We are officially adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great evening and stay healthy, everyone.